Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing something a bit different. We are completely tuning out the emotional market noise, ignoring the daily stock ticker panics, and skipping right past the executive marketing fluff. Instead, we're diving straight into the physical realities, the hard, undeniable logic that's actually dictating the future of global technology. Our entire roadmap today is pulled directly from the objective data in the Bernstein Samsung first quarter 2026 report. We're going to unpack a massive physical bottleneck that the entire global supply chain is desperately trying to navigate. So let's just dive straight into this incredibly jarring paradox. It's actually the perfect hook for our logic hunt today. Think about it. If everyday consumer tech shipments, your standard mobile phones, your everyday PCs, if those are projected to drop sharply in 2026, why in the world is Samsung projecting unprecedented financial gains? How is that even physically possible? Most retail investors see declining phone sales and instantly assume a tech giant's profits are going to tank. But the hard logic of the global supply chain tells a completely different story. To figure out why, we have to look at this layer by layer, starting right at the surface and digging down to the true physical bottleneck. The data confirms a really significant drop in mobile and PC unit shipments coming in 2026, particularly when we hit the second half of the year. Samsung actually expects that only price increases in the premium segment are going to offset this general market-wide decline. Yet, and here is the crazy part, completely decoupled from that consumer weakness, Samsung's total operating margin is projected to absolutely skyrocket to a historic high of 65.4% by 2027. That is a massive number. It tells us undeniably that whatever is driving Samsung's future profitability, it has absolutely nothing to do with how many standard laptops are sitting on Best Buy shelves. To understand how they literally get to that 65.4% margin, we have to start with the surface event. The number that kicks off our logic hunt is 57,200 million Korean won. That is Samsung's first quarter 2026 operating profit. To put that into perspective for a second, we're talking about a massive 184.9% jump quarter over quarter. That beats Bernstein's own expectations by over 21%. Look, when you see a nearly 185% surge in operating profit in a single quarter, you aren't looking at some clever new marketing campaign. You are looking at a fundamental seismic shift in physical supply and demand. Because if you want the truth, you have to follow the money. Look at Samsung's capital expenditure. I'm talking about the actual physical cash they are spending to build infrastructure right now. We start at roughly 47.5 trillion won in 2025, and that surges to almost 90 trillion won by 2027. That's a 37.5% compound annual growth rate in pure physical spending. They're pouring all this cash into memory equipment, procurement, and infrastructure in places like Pyeongtaek. This isn't just software development. This is concrete. It's steel. It's highly complex manufacturing equipment. They are literally building a physical fortress to capture a very specific high-margin demand. And here's the absolute crucial point. The underlying bottleneck they are building this giant fortress for is HBM4, or high bandwidth memory. Think of HBM4 as the physical plumbing required to make the next generation of artificial intelligence, specifically agentic AI, actually function. You can have all the brilliant AI software in the world, but without this specific hardware to shuttle data back and forth at lightning speed, the whole system just chokes. According to the report, Samsung is currently the only vendor that has already completed its first industry shipment of HBM4 to the core AI player, NVIDIA. They quite literally hold the physical keys to the gate. Let's map this out so you can see how this dominance gets locked in. In the first half of 2026, that critical first shipment to NVIDIA is done and dusted. Moving right into the second quarter, they begin sampling the even faster HBM4E to customers. We are talking staggering speeds here, 16 gigabits per second per pin. By the second half of 2026, volume expansion accelerates rapidly. And the ultimate payoff hits in 2027, where the margin gap between this premium HBM and conventional DRAM narrows significantly. So what does that actually mean in plain English? It means Samsung will have successfully hiked prices across the board, while the entire world scrambles for AI memory. And because they are hitting these timelines before anyone else, Samsung fundamentally changes the rules of the game. HBM4 is projected to account for more than 50% of Samsung's total HBM revenue, starting in the third quarter of 2026. This carries a massive price premium. Because they got to the physical bottleneck first, Samsung will essentially dictate HBM pricing. They aren't just following market trends anymore, right? They're the ones writing the price tags. Look, if you want hard proof of that pricing power, just compare Samsung to its top global rivals, Micron and SK Hynix. In the first quarter of 2026, Samsung's DRAM average selling price grew in the low 90% range, Meanwhile, Micron and SK Hynix, they only saw growth in the mid-60% range. Samsung's pricing growth is more than 1.4 times that of its peers. And the exact same story plays out in NAND, where Samsung hits the high 80% range in price growth. They are mathematically crushing the competition. And they're doing it not necessarily by shipping vastly more units, but by commanding an absolute premium for the exact right units. Section 1. The Smoking Gun. Uncovering the locked-in 2027 supply gap.
So, peeling back just one more layer, we find the actual smoking gun hidden deep in the supply and demand fundamentals. The upcoming 2027 memory supply gap isn't just some analyst's guess. It's not a fluctuation in market sentiment. It is a contracted reality. Samsung has actively signed long-term agreements with major customers, though of course the exact details are locked tight behind NDAs. The report explicitly states that shipment growth is being limited by physical supply constraints from the vendors, not weak demand. You add in the sharp surge in demand from agentic AI starting in the second half of 2026, and the math is just undeniable. The physical factories simply cannot produce chips fast enough to meet the locked-in demand.
But right in the middle of this global supply chain constraint, we've got a massive physical black box right here in the United States, the Taylor, Texas fab. The Bernstein report points out steady increases in foundry spending to ramp up this specific facility, yet there is absolutely zero disclosure on its actual capacity, its operational timeline, or who its customers will even be. It's a massive physical variable for U.S. domestic chip manufacturing, quietly absorbing huge amounts of capital while staying completely off the public radar. Why does this matter? Well, because in a world entirely defined by physical supply constraints, a giant, secretive factory is a massive wildcard for the global market. So the final verdict for this explainer is crystal clear. This memory supply gap is driven entirely by agentic AI's acceleration starting in the second half of 2026. The immediate future of artificial intelligence isn't just about cool code, algorithms, or shiny software startups anymore. It is tethered completely to these physical production lines. It's bound by the concrete being poured right now in Pyeongtaek and Texas and the totally unavoidable manufacturing bottlenecks those facilities create. AI can only think as fast as Samsung's physical memory allows it to. Which leaves us with a pretty stark reality to ponder as we wrap up today's explainer. If the physical limits of global AI acceleration heading into 2027 are being dictated by a single supplier's contracted bottlenecks, who is really pricing the future of tech? Are investors fundamentally mispricing the true physical constraints of this market? Because if you're betting on AI right now, you aren't just betting on software anymore. You are betting on the plumbing. Keep your eyes on those physical realities, keep hunting for the logic, and I will see you in the next explainer.